Hello everyone, tonight we are standing just behind the man who thought he'd outrun everything. His breath fogs on the edge of a cold that never touches the trees. He doesn't look back. He never does, but you do. You're the one who sees it. The thing that left the house when he did, that has no feet, no warmth, and doesn't cast a second shadow. It just follows. The hill is steep. The forest below is older than fire. The man steps carefully, avoiding roots like ribs and rocks that have somehow moved since morning. You don't know how long he's been walking, but the trail behind him has already begun to fade. Leaves curl over it like they're ashamed. You probably won't survive, of course. Not because of ghosts or monsters, but because some stories are colder than the wind they ride in on. And this one doesn't want to be told. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and time it is there. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You left when the birds began to fall silent, when your sister refused to say your name out loud, and when your shadow started arriving in rooms before you did. You thought the curse was a place or a thing, some burial you could avoid, some relic you could leave behind. But it wasn't. It was a direction. It always pointed at you. You crossed the ridge 3 nights ago. The same sun has risen 3 times, but the trees haven't changed. The bark looks burned, though there's no scent of fire. The wind doesn't move the branches, only the light between them. You eat only what you brought. It never runs out, but it never tastes like anything you remember. Water comes from a hollow stump, always full, always warm. The forest is full of birdsong, but none of the birds are moving. You've seen that chateau again. Once by your feet, once up a tree. Once directly under the moon when you were standing in full light. It's not always the same shape. Sometimes it's got shoulders, sometimes it doesn't. Once it had antlers, but they were wrong like cracks, not bones. You've started sleeping with your hands clasped. Not in prayer, just in habit. Like you're keeping them from touching anything they shouldn't. A long time ago, probably the Pleistocene, though paleobotanists still debate the layer, this forest was part of a larger corridor of migration. Things passed through here. Elk, hyenas, early humans. Even Megatherium, the gentle giant sloth dragging moss across the soil like a holy brush. The trees still remember that dragging. Some researchers argue whether those sloths really came this far east. The pollen layers conflict. You understand that now. Memory is regional. Sometimes it's allergic to the truth. At night, you lie under a canopy that hums not from insects but from breath. There's something always breathing in this forest, not fast, just slow enough you can't catch it on your own rhythm. You find yourself holding your breath trying to sync with it. You never do. Your dreams keep circling back to the house. It's not a real house anymore, it's an idea of a house. The crib still rocks in the memory. The cellar door still hums at 3 a.m. The bell still rings when no one touches it. That was your brother's joke, you think. Don't worry, it's just the echo of someone who wants to come in. He wasn't wrong, just optimistic. The door didn't creak when you left. That's what bothered you most. But this forest, it listens differently. You've whispered apologies here and watched mushrooms bloom within seconds. You stepped over a toadstool ring and the wind died. You sang just once, just out of habit, and a voice finished the verse. You never sang again. There's a story the local hill folk used to tell, though you only heard it once at a market with your aunt. The first man who stepped into the forest carried his sins in a pouch. When he came back out, the pouch was empty, but so was his shadow. They always said it with a smile. That kind of smile that tells you not to ask who the man was. You haven't laughed in 2 days, but you've smiled twice. Once at a rabbit skeleton curled like a child. Once when the moon rose in the wrong direction and you caught it correcting itself. That was your first real warning. Not the whispers, not the flickering path, not the rock that bled clear fluid when you sat on it. No. It was that moon. That single moment when nature remembered something it shouldn't have. You should have left then. But you didn't. Not because you weren't afraid, but because the forest had already learned your gait. And somewhere behind you, just a few paces behind you, here's something taking every step you take only a fraction slower. It never catches up. It never lags behind. You were born left-handed. That matters more than you'd think. The shadow is too. You've taken to marking trees, just lightly. A scratch with the bone edge of a fishhook you've carried since you were a child, even though you've never fished. You press the curve into the bark and listen not for echoes, but for resistance. Some trees give none. Some give too much. A few bled white, but only for a moment. By the time you turned back, the bark was whole again. You tried marking the ground once too, but the dirt rearranged itself. There's no moss on the north side of anything. That should worry you more. You pass the same stump every morning now. You've tested it, dropped a thread, left a feather, tried not to name it. It always knows. You think it's laughing. You've heard the sound of wood breathing before in that old closet back home that held the cracked mirror and the aunt who only visited when she was sad. The stump breathes like that, patient, expectant, slightly wheezy. You whisper back just to see if it'll stop. It doesn't. Once this land was a wetland, a braided river system that pulled silt across the belly of what would one day be a continent. Fossils here are hard to find, not because they're rare, but because the water moved too often to preserve what it buried. Every imprint is partial, like something changed its mind mid-memory. That's what the curse is like, a memory that wants to be someone else's. The winds change direction now. It always does that around dusk. Blows up from beneath the ferns like a breath you forgot you were holding. It moves differently here. Not around things, but through. You held your coat closed the first night. Now you don't bother. Whatever's watching knows your ribs already. You still haven't seen it fully, just its parts. A shape at the riverbank watching you drink. An outline in the smoke of the fire that didn't last. The fingers, yes, fingers, gripping the inside of your own shadow like it's trying to climb out and wear you. But you haven't seen a face. That's how you know it's not your guilt. Guilt always wants you to look at it. This thing just wants to walk beside you. Your grandfather once said that some shadows are old enough to remember different suns. You thought he was joking. Until yesterday. Because yesterday, just before the dream ended, you saw the sun rise in a way that left two shadows behind you. One long, familiar, and faint, and one short, crisp, and facing the wrong direction. You turned around. Nothing. Just the stump. You don't sleep anymore. Not in the way people mean. You rest your eyes. You hum nonsense. You let your bones decide when to stop moving. You breathe with the forest even when it exhales ash instead of air. You saw a deer. Briefly. Pale ribs like parentheses, no eyes, just empty sockets filled with leaves, or maybe those weren't leaves. It didn't walk. It arranged itself from one place to another. Like skipping a sentence you already know by heart. Somewhere near the ridge, there's a tree whose roots form a near-perfect circle. You stumbled into it by mistake and lost your name for 27 minutes. You counted. A beetle helped you. When you remembered, the beetle was gone, but you felt something nod from the canopy. You've stopped checking your compass. It spins now. Sometimes it hums. Once it bled rust. The house is still following you. Not physically, but it's here. You smelled your father's pipe smoke this morning, even though he never smoked. You saw the cradle again in the water's reflection, though you never brought it. You heard your mother's voice in the crackle of birch bark, but she never raised her voice like that. Your shadow's not following you anymore either. It's waiting. Back home, there was a story in the family never told outright, only implied through silence, that one of your ancestors buried their twin under the floorboards during a famine, and the house never forgave the lie. The chimney webs, the spoons bent. The family photos rearranged themselves until no one remembered which child came first. You were never sure if you believed that one. But when the doorknobs started turning by themselves at night before anyone had touched the doors, you started locking the cupboards too, just in case the cutlery wanted out. Some researchers still argue whether early Homo sapiens believed in ghosts or whether what we now call spiritual behavior was just an early attempt to explain weather disease or memory. But if that's true, then why did your ancestors paint hands with missing fingers in the caves? Why did they leave blank eyes on every beast they worshipped? Why do we still dream of corridors without exits? You tried singing again today? Just a hum, barely audible, something from childhood. The forest didn't respond, but the shadow did. It stopped walking, and you think it listened. You don't speak aloud anymore, not even to yourself. The sound of your own voice might name you, and names have weight here. The trees remember syllables. The stones remember intonation. Even the moths that rest on your arms at night seem to stir at vowels. You've learned to breathe your thoughts instead, whispering them into the soil where they can be forgotten. Most of them, anyway. The rest hang in the canopy like smoke. Last night you passed a cairn of bones, not animal, not quite human, something jointed wrong and wrapped in roots. Someone had tried to disguise it as a nest, but the forest isn't interested in disguises. It leaves things out on purpose. That's how you know when it wants you to look. You didn't touch the bones. You just nodded. They nodded back. The path ahead has become narrower. Less trail, more suggestion. You find yourself tilting your head at angles you didn't know you could, like trying to see the suggestion from the corner of someone else's memory. You dream in third person now. You dream of yourself walking. You dream of someone behind you mimicking your walk, but not your pause. At first you thought it was just you. A kind of echo of fatigue or guilt or both. But echoes don't smile when you trip. You've begun to understand what the curse actually is. It's not a punishment, it's an agreement, a contract of motion signed in silence. The moment you tried to leave the family, the shadow didn't chase you, it volunteered. It said, "Fine, I'll go instead." And now you're walking together. There's a tree ahead you haven't seen before, but that's impossible. You've circled back, you know the signs. The rock with the lichen shaped like an open eye. The log that smells faintly of cinnamon, though you've never dared ask why. And the stump, always the stump. But this tree is new. Tall, forked like a decision hollow enough to suggest nesting. You feel watched. Not from inside it, but through it. Like something is remembering you from the future. You pass it anyway. What else can you do? Somewhere in your pockets you find a string. You don't remember putting it there, but it's warm. Not in a threatening way. Just warm like a pebble that's been held too long. You consider tying it to your wrist, but your wrist doesn't feel like your own. So you tie it around a nearby fern instead. The fern withers immediately. You make a mental note, no more gestures. You find a stream, not the one from before, though it hums the same note. You wash your hands in it and the water clings a little longer than it should. It doesn't want to let go. You hum again that nonsense lullaby from childhood. And for a moment, the trees sway, even though there's no wind. That's new. You catch yourself smiling. Not out of joy, just surprise. Like a nervous laugh when someone asks, "Did you hear that?" And you did, but don't want to be the one who says yes. The forest has begun answering you. It's subtle. Your footfalls land quieter than they should. The birds start singing only when your back is turned. Your breath steams longer than the cold requires. And the echo behind you, the one that's almost never there, is finally stepping in sync. You try something bold. You stop. No sound follows. You wait. Still nothing. And then, a breath close to your ear but not quite sound. More suggestion, like the idea of breath. You turn. No one. Just your shadow holding its breath too. There's a legend one you overheard once in a museum atrium near the display of burial stones from the Upper Paleolithic. A child was said to have wandered too far from the firelight and returned years later unchanged in age, eyes glowing slightly, hands always wet. No one asked where he'd been. They just stopped calling him by name. You always thought that story was sad. Now you think it was a warning. Some researchers still argue whether the oldest handprint cave art was made as signal or ritual guides for the living or farewells for the dead. But you know better now. You've seen how the shadow pauses by mossy stone, how it brushes its hand over the rock as if asking permission. And sometimes the stone answers. You come to a clearing near dusk. It's wrong. Too symmetrical. Trees in a ring. Stones in patterns. Nothing moves here, not even the insects. The center holds a depression in the earth shaped like someone once curled up there and stayed. Your bones itch, not your skin, your bones. The stump is nearby again. Closer than it should be. Closer than it's ever been. It's watching. Not with eyes, with knowing. You turn to go. But your shadow doesn't follow. It stays, just for a moment. Then it moves again. Only now it's ahead of you. You were warned, you think. Not in words, not by anyone you remember, but by the way the spoons always pointed west when left on the table and the way the mirrors refused to show you fully on certain mornings. By how the floorboards creaked before your feet touched them. The warnings were subtle, polite even. But they never stopped. You step carefully now, not to avoid noise, but to avoid agreement. Every footprint is a handshake. Every breath is a contract. The path beneath you is growing too smooth. No twigs, no scatter of leaves. Only soil, fresh black tilled, as if something beneath it needed space. You don't ask what, you know better. Asking invites attention, and attention always costs more than you're willing to pay. Somewhere behind your ribs, something hums. Your heartbeat has shifted tone. Not faster, not louder, just off. Like a drum tuned by someone who never heard a heartbeat before. You place a hand on your chest and feel the rhythm, but not the origin. That worries you. It should. Your shadow keeps walking ahead of you, slightly ahead. Just enough that it doesn't quite cast from your body, just enough that it leads. It moves like it's finally remembering how to be. You try calling to it not with words, but with thought, with breath, with that humming lullaby. It stops briefly, as if considering, then turns. And for the first time, it mirrors your face. That's when you understand. It isn't following you anymore. It's walking you back. Back to the place you left. Back to the family. Back to the room with the crib that rocked without touch and the voice that always said your name in the wrong tone like a stranger trying to guess your age. You were the only one who left, but not the only one who wanted to. You pass a tree marked with spirals. Human hands wouldn't have reached that high. And the bark has grown around the markings, not over them. That means they were carved when the tree was young small. Someone told it what to remember. And it did. The forest here doesn't age at archives. You stumble. Just slightly. Your ankle brushes a stone and you feel a spark, not pain, not electricity, something older. Recognition. The stone remembers you. That's not supposed to happen. You keep walking. You try not to think of the family, but they keep appearing. Not in memory, not even in sound, but in detail. The exact rhythm of your sister's cough. The shape your mother's braid took when wet. The way your father's boots always left a small crescent behind like he carried the moon under his heels. None of that belongs here. But the forest doesn't steal memory. It returns it. Whether you asked for it or not, a beetle follows you for half a mile. Not walking, just reappearing. Always slightly to your left. You hum to it. The beetle vanishes. You say its name. You don't remember how you know it, but you do, and it returns this time walking on your shadow's shoulder. Neither of you acknowledge it. Not everything needs to be named. There is a clearing ahead. Not the same one, but almost. The stump is there again, and this time something is sitting on it. Not a person, not a creature, not a shape. Just the suggestion of attention. You don't look directly at it. You've learned. Instead, you tilt your head toward it as if listening to rain. It listens back. You whisper the name you've been afraid to say. Yours. The stump doesn't move, but the clearing grows brighter. That's worse, because nothing here glows. You've reached the place the shadow wanted you to see. It isn't a grave. Not exactly. It's more of a memory trap. A space where decisions hang in the air, waiting for someone to breathe them in. There's no monument and just a soft depression in the soil shaped like two bodies curled together, one real one made of whatever shadows dream of becoming. Your bones hurt again, but not from walking, from being known. Some researchers still argue whether prehistoric people buried their dead to honor them, hide them, or simply mark territory. But you wonder, what if they weren't burying the body? What if they were burying what followed it? What if the burial was never for the dead, but for the thing that wouldn't die? You kneel. You place your hands in the soil, and your shadow kneels too. But it doesn't copy you. It mirrors you. Exactly. And when you rise, it doesn't follow. It stands ahead and you step into it. Just briefly. Just enough to remember that you were the one who stayed behind. That it was the other one who walked away. That this whole time it wasn't following you, it was trying to come home. And now it has. There's a pause now. Not in the forest, not in the wind, but in you. A stillness that feels unfamiliar, like waking up and finding the bed is already made. Like realizing your hands are cleaner than they should be. You don't move right away. Something is watching. Something always is. But this feels new. This feels respectful. You're not alone anymore. Not because someone has joined you, but because something has left. The weight in your breath is lighter. Your ribs ache less. You blink, and your shadow blinks too, but only after you do. The stump is gone. The clearing remains, but its boundaries blur. Trees lean back, stones soften. You're not sure how long you've stood here. You don't remember arriving, but your knees are dirty and your palms smell like memory. That must mean something. You look at the depression in the earth again. There are no bones, no tokens. Just a slight hollow where something once lay down and trusted the dirt to keep it secret. You kneel again, instinct now, and press your ear to the soil. You hear nothing, and that finally is peace. You rise slower than before. Not in fear, not in pain, just with the gravity of having been returned. The forest allows your steps. The birds hum again. And your shadow walks behind you now, not ahead, not beside, back where it belongs. You don't ask questions. Questions wake things. You pass the spiral-marked tree again. This time you place your hand on the bark. Just briefly, it's warm. The warmth of a thing that has waited too long and no longer minds what shape it takes. Ahead the path has changed. No longer a loop, no longer smooth. Now it's rough again, unmarked, uncertain. That's good. It means you're somewhere else. Somewhere forward. The forest will not forget you. That's fine. You were never meant to be forgotten, but the story is no longer interested in chasing you. It's watching someone else now. Someone near the edge of forgetting. Someone still pretending the shadow is theirs. You'll warn them, quietly, gently, maybe with a feather, maybe with a smile, but only if they ask. Some researchers say the earliest myths weren't stories at all, but maps. Ways of charting what could not be crossed. And some maps didn't lead anywhere, they were designed only to keep you out. This one you think is both. You leave the clearing. You leave the curse. You leave the trail of soft-breathing stones and wrong-angled deer and the memory of footsteps that arrived before you. And your shadow follows. Only when you stop to rest do you notice the change. It's not quite your shape anymore. A little taller, a little older, as if it's still walking the rest of you home. And somewhere far behind you, or maybe far ahead, the stump exhales. The moss grows in the wrong direction, again curling inward like sleep. The beetle waits with no name, no hurry. And the hollow in the soil breathes in once more gently, like a lullaby sung without a mouth. The forest does not close its eyes. It doesn't need to. It has you now, your breath, your echo, your kindness. The story ends where all shadows begin, at the edge of something warm, something remembered, something not quite yours. So sleep gently. You've been walked home.